Okay, so this is the What's New enablement session for Modeler 10.3. The product will be released at the end of the month. We're on schedule, so there shouldn't be any delays to that. Before we look at the details of the release, we can just recap on the strategic initiatives, which are pretty much the same we've had for the last few years and will probably be very similar going forward as well. So continuing support for the digital thread with our integrations for PTC and third-party products, support for standards-based systems and software modeling, specific market-leading features in a few areas you can see listed there. We've investing quite a bit into usability improvements and also platform modernization, improving performance and the modernization of the architecture. So from a high level, that's the direction. This is the roadmap. So we're planning annual releases. This may change into the future. You can see the focus areas going forward are really around usability, completing our SysML2 solution, and then improving the infrastructure with performance and architecture, as I mentioned. Okay, so looking at 10.3 in more detail, this is the summary slide. We've got some SysML2 enhancements around the textual notation, and a simplified solution that we can enable in Modeler to make SysML2 more easy to use and adopt. The usability improvement is a new properties pane that you can see in the middle of the screen there. This is a long-standing problem that we've had a usability challenge with our existing solution for viewing item details. So we'll look at that in more detail. Some more support for digital thread with single sign-on. Not a huge amount to talk about there, but we'll go through some of the details there. We've updated support for the latest version of ANSYS Model Center. Modeler has an integration with this platform where you can run co-simulation engineering analysis activities. And at the bottom, we have our infrastructure work that we've been focusing on, enabling support for deployment into Azure. That also includes support for Enter ID. We've spent quite a bit of time improving performance this release, and we'll talk about the details of that. And we've started the conversion to 64-bit. So that's an important project that's going on in the background. It's not complete in this release, but we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. So the main value that this release gives to our customers is easier access to accurate and update product data, increasing user productivity. So that comes from that new usability, the new properties pane. Ways to improve product quality and design quality with SysML2 and AI-driven model review, analysis, and optimization. And we'll look at that in a moment. SysML2 Lite gives you a really easy and simple version of SysML2 to use, which is a really good way for new adopters, new users to start learning SysML2. And we're helping customers to lower the total cost of ownership by enabling cloud support and single sign-on. Okay, so SysML 2.0. So this is the new standard that was released last summer. Version 1 of the standard was released last summer, and it's been ongoing for many years, the development. PTC Modeler was a very early implementer of the standard, and we've been kind of stepping through these areas that you can see around on the graphic. This is really the kind of logical flow that you'd create models, requirements, then system domain, then architecture and behavior. So we've implemented in this sort of sequence, and we're at the bottom left corner really working on the textual notation, and in the future we'll look at some API support as well. We'll revisit the API question in a moment. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time investing in building all of these capabilities. So there's graphical base modeling. In this release, we've implemented an exporter. So in simple, in simple terms, this is model to text. So SysML2, the standard, has a graphical notation as well as a textual notation that's directly equivalent. So from our model in Modeler, we can hit generate and it will export a .sysml file. You can see an example here. And this can then be used for simple data exchange with other tools. So you could pass in the architecture of a model into another MBSE tool that's capable of ingesting .sysml. And you can also pass them into AI tools as well. So you can pass these in and do model analysis, model review, syntax checking, and so on. So this is really powerful, and it complements the last release where we had an importer. So we're able to take a .sysml file, import it into Modeler, and it will automatically create a compliant SysML2 model based on that textual definition. Again, these can be generated from AI tools, from other MBSE tools, and then ingested into Modeler. Some of the interesting AI use cases that this enables are listed here. I won't go into too much detail, but now that we can export the model into a concrete machine-readable definition, most AI tools now can understand SysML2 textual notation very well. So you can paste it into there and you can do review, analysis, ask questions of the model in natural language, generate artifacts from the model like training and documentation. And you can also convert the model into different formats that might enable import-export with other tools like Windchill, for example. So these are all really useful, valuable use cases, and it enables you to use whatever AI tool the customer wants to use. So these are not embedded capabilities in Modeler in any way. We're just exporting a file that we then copy into an external tool. So here's a demonstration of the SysML2 exporter. So we start from a model, and then we run the export command. We go and select a location that we're going to export to. So it picks up the active model that you can see on the left, and then it converts it to the textual notation. This is a medium-sized model. It's not particularly large, really. It's kind of small to medium. And then here's an example of how you can copy and paste this into Copilot in this case, PTC approved AI platform. And it gives you lots of useful feedback as well. So it explains issues with the model, where there might be compliance problems. So very, very useful, very easy to use. Okay, so that's the SysML2 textual notation exporter. Here we can see some information about the SysML2 Lite solution. So Modeler comes with a mechanism called user roles, where you can hide parts of the solution. You can select meta model types and UI actions, UI elements, and hide them for certain users. So we've built a SysML2 Lite user role that hides a lot of the more complex elements of SysML2 and just gives users a subset of the overall SysML2 solution. So kind of about 16 types and links instead of around 60 plus. It's probably a bit more than that in truth, more than the 60, I would say. So this makes it much easier to learn SysML2, to start adopting it easily and quickly. And when you get a bit more advanced, you can just change the user role back to the normal one and see the full SysML2 solution. So it's a very easy way of providing a simplified version of SysML2 to get started. And you can see the full menu in this graphic here. And we'll be adding more over time as well, more capabilities to this. So it can be a bit overwhelming for new users. So certainly the SysML2 Lite solution is a good way to go there. And we have a quick demonstration of that. So here we see a diagram open with the full menu and quite a lot of different meta types available for creation for the user. Similarly, on the right-click menu as well, we have 60 plus different types of entities that can be created. So with that user role, we can now see In the package browser on the left, on diagrams and in the menus, we see a filtered set of objects and items. So nothing needed to enable this, just the user has to just go and select that user role. Okay, let's look at the usability enhancement. And I mentioned that this is a long-standing problem, really, I would say, in terms of user experience that we've had in the products. We have an existing properties pane, but there are numerous challenges with it, making it hard for users to find information quickly. So we really wanted to improve the user experience and show, first of all, only the information that's relevant. On the previous one, we'd show a lot of information that actually wasn't directly relevant for that type of item. So it's a non-modal pane, so we can undock it, we can have it floating, we can resize it, we can create multiple instances of the properties pane and lock on a specific object. So it enables us to look at several items in the model at once and see properties for each of them in a different pane, and then interact with those objects more easily. So much easier navigation of related items as well. I think we can maybe see it in the middle, but this is a huge improvement. It basically shows the links the object has, but also the linked items. So within this same panel, you can navigate onto the linked items and then their linked items. So it's kind of a relationship explorer embedded within the properties panel. And this is really much easier than it was before to see those relationships across the model. It's got good support for SysML1, SysML2 and UML, and that will certainly make quite a lot of our existing customers happy. So a really nice enhancement. We've spent a lot of time on this. It was a lot more complicated than we initially thought because of the complexity of the data model that Modeler supports with different profiles and so on. So we can see the new property grid on the right, making some edits. Here we can see the related objects. And we can do filtering of this UI as well. So we can kind of hide some of these sections that are expanding. This is going actually quite quick. But we can see that we can make edits here. We can make changes to editable fields. Some of these are rich text fields. So we can expand this panel. It's quite small at the moment. We can view RTF in a big view as well that we've just expanded. On the bottom is what we can just see at the bottom is the old properties pane. So we were showing changes between the two, synchronizing just there in that rather quick demonstration. Here we can see creating multiple instances of the property grid and locking it on different objects. Okay, that demo was a little quick. But it gave you an idea of the capabilities that we have, and I think this is definitely going to be a big improvement for usability for our existing customers. Okay, on digital thread. So we have single sign-on support now, so that we can play nicely with Codebeamer and Windchill PLM and enable single sign-on when we're using OSLC. So this enables, obviously, when we connect to Windchill or Codebeamer using our OSLC integration, that we're able to reuse the same credentials for those systems. In the Azure world, we can do support for Enter ID, and we're using Ping Federate as the identity provider in this case, and that's consistent with Codebeamer and Windchill. We've all made sure that we're supporting the same version of the IDP, and that's what we're testing against across our DPT products. So this will work on-premise or cloud hosted in Azure, that we'll talk about in a moment. Okay, model simulation. This is really just updating our support for ANSYS Model Center. We have a few customers that use this integration, and a few more that are looking at it. And this enables more advanced simulation than we can do in Modeler ourselves. This is a dedicated platform with many different integrations to simulation tools. We have some demos on our YouTube site if you're interested in learning a bit more about that. On the infrastructure side, here's our Azure deployment. So this is a customer managed Azure instance. We don't today have support for a PTC hosted, PTC managed cloud instance or Azure deployment. That may come into the future, but for today, this is a customer managed. And you can see that Modeler can be deployed on any Windows server or desktop instance, Windows 11 instance. So it should, we think it'll work on other cloud providers, but we don't have official support for things like Google, for example. But Modeler just needs a Windows, compliant Windows version. So in this environment, we'd have all of the components in Modeler installed and potentially some desktop virtualization. Now, depending on how it's deployed, you may be able to connect directly with the Modeler client to the server. If you want best performance, then recommend use desktop virtualization. This could be Windows RDP or Azure Virtual Desktop. So we support officially Azure Virtual Desktop as well. So this gives our customers much more flexibility. More and more PTC customers are moving towards cloud, as we know. And this is important that we are able to be part of those types of projects where customers are deploying into the cloud. Okay, excited about these performance improvements. Again, we've invested a lot of our resources for this release in performance. We've optimized the data access layer. So we've improved some of the store procedures, how we write and read data into our database. We've implemented a mechanism for preloading items silently. So when the user's idle, Modeler will load some diagram elements that you can decide which you want it to do. So they'll get loaded into memory, and then when you do something like open a diagram, it takes a fraction of the time. So this is really useful. We've kind of had the balance so that we don't intrude on the user. So there's no noticeable kind of lag while we're doing this loading. And the solutions look really good. So we've optimized some of the layers in our architecture, the profile helper. So that had become a little bit slow. So we've put in some improvements there. We've optimized some of the caching that we have and some client-side code refactoring as well. So several different areas, and we have some specific numbers. We've done quite a bit of performance testing in our different environments, and opening SysML1 diagrams that have been preloaded can be reduced by up to 60 or more %. So from 3 to 1 minute. Opening SysML2 diagrams is reduced even further. So really sort of 20% of the time that it used to in previous versions. Creating new items as well, much quicker, about 60% reduction there. So that's when you're creating multiple items on a diagram quite quickly. There used to be some lag, so now it's much more responsive. So we really hope that our users will notice these. I'm pretty sure that they will. And this preloading is configurable, so users are able to select things they want to be preloaded. And obviously when they're not working on the tool, these will get loaded, and then when they go and open a huge diagram, for example, the time savings will be really significant. So we're looking forward to getting feedback from our customers on how well this is working. Some customer feedback around database management, wanting better user interfaces for managing SQL instances, monitoring and optimizing some database operations, and some auditing as well. So this is providing a bit more enterprise capability on our database, which is good to see. Quite a lot of our customers want these improvements and some more. So we'll continue to try and improve this area of our database management. As I mentioned earlier, we are converting Modeler to 64-bit. We've converted several components already, but we don't know where we are until we do everything. So we're going to invest quite a bit of capacity in the next release with the aim to complete that conversion for 10.4. So that'll be really exciting. We expect to see some good performance improvements and the ability or the opportunity to implement further code improvements to get better performance. So in summary, we've improved our SysML2 capabilities. We've improved usability for a key customer complaint or challenge that we've heard for many years. We're keeping up with the rest of PTC's digital product traceability by enabling single sign-on. We've updated our support for the simulation integration with Model Center. And we've invested a lot into our infrastructure improvements for performance and architecture. Okay. So I've got a couple more slides on integrated product engineering, which has relevance to Modeler in terms of DPT and integrations, but also in terms of systems engineering and ALM, PLM. So we're all aware, I'm sure, of PTC's initiative around integrated product engineering and investing in offerings for better ALM, PLM interoperability and integration. So the four main projects that are being worked on are shown on the slide. Integration between the different change process capabilities in Windchill and Codebeamer. So new features in both products will be coming in October, I believe, where enabling more automated execution of change processes across those tools. Digital product traceability on the left. We all well familiar with this, and our main digital thread products connected through OSLC with third party as well. A new product, the Relationship Explorer, will connect to PTC products and third party and enable a network view of relationships across the data and the design artifacts in our products. So this is a really exciting product that's coming again, I think October, that can connect to a variety of products and allow navigation across this network of relationships. On the top right, we have product architecture. So PTC have invested in a new product for defining product architectures with the aim to really provide simplified systems engineering in terms of architecture management, and also to help orchestrate better PLM and ALM design activities. So this is currently called PAT. The name will change, and this is the product architecture tool. It'll allow you to define functional architectures, product architectures, to work in a modular way, and then to allocate functions to the product architecture, the solution, and then help with orchestrating the design activities that are conducted through the different design engineering disciplines. It will have end-to-end traceability as well. And the meta model, the kind of entities, the business objects that it'll create are shown at the bottom right there. So we're going to introduce some new types of business objects that are very similar to MBSE objects. You'll be able to see that the new product is built on Windchill. So it'll actually be an optional module on top of Windchill. And it'll introduce this meta model for these types of objects so that we can do really, I mean, I call it basic, but it's still very powerful, but quite simplified systems engineering in terms of the meta model. These entities align with SysML2, so we intend to have exchange with MBSE SysML2 solutions. So the main capabilities for this new product will revolve around defining the functional architecture that you can see on the left, the product architecture on the right, which is the implementation, the solution. And this will comprise of mechanical design, electrical design, electronic, and of course software design, and provide a complete holistic view of the product solution. We can connect the functions on the left to the solution on the right. So this is how we allocate the solution to the functions we want to deliver. The bigger picture, in terms of sort of MBSE and Modeler, the intent is to have exchange of data between this new product and MBSE tools like Modeler. So Modeler will be able to access this data in PAT. It'll be able to retrieve or download this functional architecture and view the same entities in Modeler. Similarly with the product architecture, they'll be able to access this and kind of get a synchronized copy in Modeler, make changes, push it back into PAT. So we need this two-way exchange of information. Now, PAT is really only showing, in simple terms, the high-level architecture. MBSE tools will go and have much more detailed definitions of the system model. So much more detailed definition of behavior, maybe parametric modeling for physics-based simulation and analysis, and then more detailed information in terms of architecture and parametrics. So MBSE is really more advanced systems engineering, functional behavior, architecture design. PAT is more of an enterprise view of the high-level architectures. And you can see it will connect to requirements upstream, the solution in elements, EBOMs in Windchill, and then verification, validation artifacts in Codebeamer as well. Okay, so I just wanted to give a little bit of information about this new product as it falls in the systems engineering MBSE space. It's being carefully positioned so as not to overlap with Modeler, other than where we want it to, and allow exchange for Modeler so that customers can use PAT and MBSE tools in conjunction. They can use them together.